The Undelivered Letters, Chapter 1. My mother, Margaret, was a woman of quiet strength, her life seemingly an open book of devotion to her family and community. She was a pillar of consistency, her routines and habits forming the reliable rhythm of my childhood. After her passing, her absence was a silence that echoed through the house, a quiet space where her laughter and gentle humming used to be. My father, Thomas, had passed away a few years prior, leaving me, their only child, to navigate the profound silence of an empty nest and an empty home. I'm Clara. I'm 60 years old now, a retired teacher, living a quiet life after my husband passed away a few years ago. Sorting through my parents' belongings was a bittersweet task, a slow walk through the landscape of their lives, filled with familiar objects and cherished memories. Their house, once vibrant with the energy of a family, now felt like a repository of untold stories, of lives lived and lessons learned. One Tuesday morning, as I was going through old mail in a dusty box in the attic, a box filled with old bills, holiday cards, and miscellaneous papers my mother had kept, I found a large, plain brown package. It was unexpected, addressed simply to the estate of Margaret Vance, with a return address from the U.S. Postal Service, Dead Letter Office, and a date stamp from just a few weeks prior. My heart gave a little flutter. A package from the Dead Letter Office? What could this be? My mother had been gone for almost 5 years. I carefully cut open the tape. Inside, neatly bundled with string, were dozens of letters. They were old, their envelopes yellowed and brittle, some with faint water stains, others with bent corners and worn edges. All were addressed to Margaret Vance, at an address my parents had lived at in the early 1960s, an apartment they rented before buying our family home. The postmarks on the envelopes spanned from 1963 to 1968, and the sender's name, scrawled in a delicate, looping hand I didn't recognize, was Eleanor Vance. The return address was from Maplewood Sanatorium, Lakeview, Maine. Eleanor Vance, Maplewood Sanatorium. I stared at the name, a cold shiver running down my spine. I had never heard of an Eleanor Vance in our family. My mother was an only child, or so I had always believed. My father was also an only child. There were no other Vances in our immediate family. And Maplewood Sanatorium. The name felt distant, unsettling, like something from a forgotten era. It sounded like a mental institution, a place of confinement, of secrets. My hands trembled as I picked up the first letter from the top of the bundle, postmarked June 1963. The paper was thin, the ink faded, but my mother's name, Margaret Vance, was clearly visible on the address line. I opened it carefully, the paper crackling under my fingers. The letter began, "My dearest Margaret, I hope this letter finds you well. It has been so long since I've heard from you. I miss you terribly here, in this quiet place. The days blend into one another. I think of you always. Are you well? Is Thomas well? Are you happy? I know I made mistakes. I know I was foolish, but I never meant to cause so much trouble. Please, Margaret, tell me about Lily. Has she found a good home? Is she safe? Does she remember me at all? Just a little? They said it was for the best, that I wasn't well enough. But a mother knows, Margaret. A mother always knows her child." I can feel her absence like a constant ache. Lily, a child's name, a child given away, given up for adoption. And Eleanor, Margaret's sister, the writer of the letters, was her mother. My mind reeled. My mother had a sister? My Aunt Eleanor? And she had a child? Lily? My cousin given up for adoption. All of this was hidden from me, from the world. The letters continued, dozens of them, each one a heartbreaking plea, a desperate longing for connection, for news of her daughter Lily. Eleanor's handwriting, initially delicate, became increasingly shaky, sometimes scrawled, sometimes tear-stained. The letters painted a vivid, agonizing picture of her life at Maplewood Sanatorium, her struggle with her mental health, her profound love for her sister Margaret, and her desperate longing for her baby Lily, who was taken from her and given up for adoption while she was institutionalized. The postmarks stretched over 5 years, from 1963 to 1968. Each letter was a cry from the depths of her soul, a plea for help, for answers, for the return of her daughter. Margaret, please, you are my only hope. They tell me I must forget, that I must focus on getting better. But how can a mother forget her child? Lily, my sweet Lily, please find her for me. Tell her I love her. Tell her I think of her every single day. Tell her I will always be her mother, even if I can't be with her. And on many of the envelopes, in fading red ink, was stamped, "Return to sender, addressee unknown." My mother never received these letters. They were returned undelivered, kept by the Postal Service for decades, and then inexplicably sent to her estate. Why? Why were they never delivered? Had my mother changed her address without notifying Eleanor? Or was there a deliberate act to prevent these letters from reaching her? The letters hinted at a larger family secret. Eleanor's institutionalization was not just due to her postpartum depression. There were hints of mistakes, of being foolish, of causing trouble. In the conservative 1960s, an unmarried mother, an illegitimate child, this was often hidden away, a source of shame. Was Eleanor's institutionalization a deliberate family decision to hide the shame of an unmarried mother and an illegitimate child? Was this why she was sent to Maplewood, and why Lily was taken from her? My grandparents, my mother's parents. What role did they play in this? Did they know about Eleanor's struggles? About Lily's birth? About the adoption? Did they force Eleanor into Maplewood? Did they orchestrate Lily's adoption? The revelation was a profound shock, shaking the very foundations of my understanding of my family. My quiet, consistent mother had a sister, a secret aunt, a secret cousin, a life hidden from me for 60 years. My grandparents, seemingly loving and traditional, might have been involved in a desperate act to bury a family secret, to hide a truth that would have brought shame to their door. The letters, so fragile, so heartbreaking, now held the key to understanding a hidden past, a past filled with profound sorrow, difficult choices, and the enduring power of a mother's love for a child she never knew. My immediate focus was clear. I had to find Lily, my cousin, my Aunt Eleanor's daughter, a woman who would be in her early 60s now, living a life unaware of her biological mother, unaware of the family she came from, unaware of the desperate pleas of a mother who never forgot her. Chapter 2.1. The bundle of undelivered letters addressed to my mother from her secret sister, Eleanor Vance, written from Maplewood Sanatorium between 1963 and 1968, had shattered my understanding of my family's history. My mother, Margaret, had a sister I never knew about, an aunt, Eleanor, who was institutionalized for postpartum depression after giving birth to a daughter, Lily, in 1963. Lily, my cousin, was given up for adoption. The letters were Eleanor's desperate pleas to Margaret to find Lily, to rescue her, to not forget her. The stamp, return to sender, addressee unknown, on many of the envelopes suggested they never reached my mother or were deliberately intercepted. The revelation of my hidden aunt and cousin and the implication of a family secret involving my grandparents and mother was overwhelming. My mother, Margaret, the quiet, consistent woman I knew, might have been privy to this secret, might have even been involved in its concealment, or might have been deliberately kept in the dark by her parents. The hints in the letters about mistakes, foolishness, and trouble suggested that Eleanor's institutionalization and Lily's adoption were perhaps a deliberate family decision to hide the shame of an unmarried mother and an illegitimate child in the conservative 1960s. My immediate focus was clear. I had to find Lily, my cousin, my Aunt Eleanor's daughter, a woman who would be in her early 60s now, living a life unaware of her biological mother, unaware of the family she came from. My first step was to learn more about Maplewood Sanatorium. What kind of institution was it? What were its practices regarding patients and their children? Did it keep records of children born there or given up for adoption from there? I searched online databases, historical archives, and medical directories for information about Maplewood Sanatorium, Lakeview, Maine. I found that Maplewood Sanatorium was indeed a mental health institution, operating from the early 1900s until its closure in the late 1970s. It was known for its remote location and its strict, somewhat isolating practices. Many of its patients were women suffering from what was then termed nervous breakdowns or hysteria, often including postpartum depression. Records from such institutions, especially regarding patient admissions and the fates of their children, were often sealed or incomplete due to privacy laws and the social stigma surrounding mental illness and out-of-wedlock births in that era. I contacted the state archives in Maine, inquiring about any records of Maplewood Sanatorium, specifically regarding patient admissions around 1963 and any records of births or adoptions from the institution. The archivist informed me that patient records were heavily restricted due to privacy, and birth records were often kept by the local town clerk, not the institution itself. However, they did have some administrative records from Maplewood Sanatorium, which might contain general information about its operations. I obtained what administrative records were available, poring over them for any mention of Eleanor Vance, or any policies regarding children born to patients. There was no direct mention of Eleanor Vance in the general administrative records, but there were broad outlines of policies that encouraged discreet placement of children born to unmarried or unstable mothers. This confirmed the societal pressures of the era and the likelihood that Lily's adoption was indeed orchestrated to avoid social stigma. The letters from Eleanor to my mother continued to haunt me. They were a raw, emotional testament to a mother's pain, a sister's longing, and a family's buried secret. The fact that they were never delivered or deliberately intercepted added another layer of heartbreak to the story. If my mother received them, or if she did, why did she never speak of Eleanor or Lily? Did my grandparents play a role in this concealment? Did they prevent the letters from reaching my mother? I decided to try to find any living relatives on my mother's side, particularly any who might remember her parents, my grandparents, and their generation. My mother was the youngest of her siblings, but I knew she had a few older cousins. They would be in their late 70s or 80s now, if they were still alive. They might have vague memories of Eleanor or whispers of a family secret. I began to trace my maternal grandparents' family tree, looking for their siblings and their children. This was a challenging task, as I had very little information about my mother's extended family. My mother rarely spoke of her family background, focusing instead on her immediate family with my father. Through genealogical websites and distant family contacts, I managed to find a few elderly cousins on my mother's side. They were distant, but they might have some knowledge of Eleanor Vance or of a family secret surrounding a hidden child. I reached out to them, gently explaining my research into a family mystery and the discovery of undelivered letters mentioning an Eleanor Vance and a child named Lily. The possibility of finding Lily, my cousin, a woman in her 60s, was a driving force, a beacon of hope in the midst of the pain and confusion. I knew this would be a difficult and sensitive journey, but Eleanor's desperate pleas echoed from the past, compelling me to find her daughter, to bring her out of the shadows, to connect her with the family she never knew she had. Chapter 2.2: The Search for Lily, My Hidden Cousin, and the truth behind Eleanor's institutionalization and the secrecy surrounding Lily's adoption was proving to be a complex journey through the past. The letters from Eleanor were a poignant testament to her pain and her desperate longing for her daughter. The return to sender stamps on the envelopes and the lack of any knowledge of Eleanor in my immediate family hinted at a deliberate act of concealment, most likely orchestrated by my grandparents to bury the shame of an unmarried mother and an illegitimate child in the conservative 1960s. My attempts to contact elderly cousins on my mother's side yielded limited success. Many had faded memories or were simply unaware of any hidden family members. The secret had been remarkably well kept. I decided to shift my focus to finding Lily through modern means, DNA testing. I had already submitted my own DNA for analysis through a commercial genealogy service. If Lily, or any of her direct descendants, had also submitted their DNA to the same service, a match could potentially reveal her identity and whereabouts. This was my strongest hope. While waiting for potential DNA matches, I decided to revisit the letters from Eleanor. They contained invaluable information about her life at Maplewood Sanatorium, her emotional state, and her unwavering love for Lily. They also offered clues to the mindset of the time, the societal pressures that led to such extreme measures of concealment. Eleanor wrote about the sanatorium's routines, the quiet despair of many patients, the occasional visits from family. She described her longing for Lily, her desperate attempts to gain news of her, her pleas to Margaret to find her daughter. The later letters showed a decline in her mental state, her handwriting becoming more erratic, her pleas more fragmented, more desperate. The final letters, dated 1968, were almost illegible, filled with a profound sense of resignation and despair. What happened to Eleanor after 1968? Did she ever leave Maplewood Sanatorium? Did she recover? Or did she spend the rest of her life institutionalized, forgotten by a family, determined to keep her and her daughter a secret. I expanded my search for Eleanor Vance. I looked for death records in Maine, specifically around the Lakeview area, from the late 1960s onwards. I searched for any mention of her in Social Security death indexes or public records. Finding information about individuals who had been institutionalized was challenging, as their lives were often shielded from public view. I eventually found a death record for an Eleanor Vance, born in 1941, who passed away in 1978 in a state mental hospital not far from Maplewood. This suggested that she had likely been transferred from Maplewood when it closed and spent the rest of her life in institutional care. My Aunt Eleanor had died without ever being reunited with her daughter, without ever knowing if Lily was safe, if she had found a good home. This realization brought a fresh wave of sorrow, a profound sadness for the life my aunt had lived, a life overshadowed by secrecy, institutionalization, and the heartbreaking loss of her child. The DNA results from the commercial genealogy service arrived. I logged in, my heart pounding with anticipation. There was a strong match, a first cousin match. The name, Lily Turner. Lily Turner, my cousin, my Aunt Eleanor's daughter. A first cousin match confirmed that she was indeed the child of my mother's sibling, Eleanor Vance. The age of Lily Turner was listed as 62, aligning perfectly with a child born in 1963. Her location was in a different state, hundreds of miles away. My breath hitched. Lily. She was real. She was alive. She had a name. And she was a first cousin, meaning my mother, Margaret, was indeed her aunt, Eleanor's sister. This also meant that if my mother had indeed received those letters, she would have known exactly who Eleanor was and what had happened. This brought a fresh wave of painful questions about my mother's role in all of this. Did she know? Did she choose to remain silent? Or was she also a victim of my grandparents' determination to bury the truth? I looked at Lily Turner's public profile on the DNA site. It was sparse, but she had a public family tree. Her adoptive parents were listed, both deceased. There was no mention of a biological family. She was likely unaware of her origins, unaware of the desperate pleas of her mother, Eleanor Vance, who loved her fiercely until her last breath. The time had come. I composed a message to Lily Turner through the DNA service. I introduced myself, explaining the DNA match, and then very carefully, I began to share the story of the undelivered letters, of her biological mother, Eleanor Vance, and of the circumstances surrounding her birth and adoption. I was gentle, compassionate, understanding the immense shock and deep emotional impact this revelation would have. I offered to share the letters, the history, to answer any questions she might have. This was the culmination of my search, the moment of revelation, the bringing of a decades-old secret into the light. The letters, returned undelivered decades later, had found their way to me, and through them, I had found Lily. The weight of the secret carried by my family for so long was now being lifted, replaced by the profound hope of connection, of understanding, and of a family finally finding its way back to a form of wholeness, embracing its hidden branches and the lives that were shaped by secrets and difficult choices. Chapter 3.1: The DNA match with Lily Turner, a predicted first cousin, and her age aligning perfectly with a child born in 1963, confirmed that she was Lily, my hidden cousin, the daughter of my secret aunt, Eleanor Vance. My Aunt Eleanor, who wrote dozens of desperate letters from Maplewood Sanatorium, pouring out her heart and her unwavering love for the child who was taken from her. This revelation, that Lily was alive and that I had found her, was overwhelming, a mixture of profound joy and immense sorrow for the decades of separation and silence. My message to Lily Turner, carefully composed, was sent. The waiting period was filled with intense anticipation, a mix of hope and trepidation. How would she react to such a life-altering truth? Would she be open to connecting? Or would the shock be too great, the pain of the past too much to bear? Then, a reply, a message from Lily Turner. Clara, I received your message. First cousin, Eleanor Vance, Maplewood Sanatorium, the letters? I don't know what to say. My adoptive parents were always open about my adoption, but they knew very little about my biological family. I've always felt a part of me was missing, a piece of my story unknown. I've tried to find information, but adoption records are sealed. Your message, it's a lot to process, but it resonates deeply. Eleanor Vance, my biological mother? A sanatorium? And letters, undelivered letters? I want to know more, Clara. I need to know more. I think you might have the answers to questions I've carried my entire life. Her response was cautious but open, filled with a deep longing for answers. She wanted to know. My heart swelled with compassion and relief. We began to communicate, first through messages, then through phone calls. I shared with her the full story, the discovery of the undelivered letters, Eleanor's heartbreaking pleas, the glimpse into her life at Maplewood Sanatorium. I explained about my mother, Margaret Vance, Eleanor's sister, and the possibility that the letters never reached her, or were deliberately intercepted. I shared the historical context of the 1960s, the societal pressures that led families to hide illegitimate births and institutionalize those who brought shame. Lily listened, tears often flowing freely as she absorbed the story of her biological mother, Eleanor, a woman who loved her so fiercely, who never forgot her, even from within the confines of a mental institution. The letters, when I eventually shared digital copies with her, were a profound and deeply emotional connection to the mother she never knew. They were a testament to Eleanor's enduring love, her fight against despair, and her unwavering hope of being reunited with her daughter. My dearest Lily, if you ever read these words, know this. I loved you from the moment I knew you were coming. You were a gift, a light in my dark world. They said I was not well, that I couldn't care for you. But I held you, Lily. I felt your warmth. I heard your cry, and I never, not for a single moment, stopped being your mother. I'm fighting to get well for you. I'm fighting to find my way back to you. Please, don't ever doubt my love. Reading these words, seeing Eleanor's raw, unfiltered love for her child, brought tears to both our eyes. Lily had found her mother, not in person, but through her words, through the story of her sacrifice and her unwavering devotion. We arranged to meet in person. The day I met Lily Turner, my first cousin, the daughter of my secret aunt Eleanor, the child lost to her family through institutionalization and adoption, was a moment of profound emotional intensity. We embraced, two strangers brought together by a century-old clock, a forgotten bundle of letters, and a secret that had finally come to light. There was an immediate sense of kinship. a deep understanding that transcended the decades of separation. The focus shifted to understanding the full extent of the family secret. Why were the letters undelivered? Did my mother know about Eleanor and Lily? Or was she also kept in the dark by her parents, my grandparents? Lily and I decided to investigate further, to piece together the full narrative of Eleanor's life, the circumstances of Lily's birth and adoption, and the role my grandparents played in all of it. We sought out old public records, searched newspaper archives for any mention of the Vance family in the early 1960s, and looked for anyone who might have worked at Maplewood Sanatorium or had memories of that era. The discovery of the letters, the revelation of Eleanor and Lily, and the reunion with Lily was a testament to the enduring power of family bonds, the way truth finds its way to the surface, and the healing that comes with understanding and connection. But the journey was not over. We needed to understand the full truth to give Eleanor's story the dignity and recognition it deserved, and to bring Lily home to the full history of her biological family. Chapter 3.2: The Reunion with Lily. My first cousin, the daughter of my secret Aunt Eleanor, was a profound and deeply emotional experience. We spent hours talking, sharing our stories, weaving together the fragmented pieces of our lives. Lily finally had answers to the questions that had haunted her, a connection to the biological mother she never knew, a mother who loved her fiercely from within the confines of Maplewood Sanatorium. The letters, Eleanor's heartfelt pleas and declarations of love, were a direct, tangible link to the woman who had given her life. Our focus now shifted to fully understanding the depth of the family secret, the reasons for Eleanor's institutionalization, the circumstances of Lily's adoption, and the role my grandparents, and potentially my mother, played in keeping this truth buried for decades. We wanted to give Eleanor's story the dignity and recognition it deserved, to honor her memory, and to bring Lily home to the full history of her biological family. We delved deeper into the history of Maplewood Sanatorium. We found articles and historical documents describing the institution's practices, which, common for the era, often involved isolating patients from their families, especially those deemed socially undesirable due to unwed pregnancies or mental health issues. This reinforced the idea that Eleanor's institutionalization was not just for treatment, but also a means of social control and concealment. We continued searching for any remaining records of Eleanor Vance at Maplewood or other institutions. We found a few more administrative notes confirming her transfer from Maplewood when it closed in the late 1970s to the State Mental Hospital, where she later passed away in 1978. It was a tragic confirmation that Eleanor had indeed spent the majority of her adult life institutionalized, separated from her daughter, her cries for help muted by the walls of the sanatorium and the silence of her family. The question of why the letters were never delivered to my mother, Margaret, remained central. Did she intentionally avoid receiving them? Or was she simply unaware? My grandparents, Margaret's parents, were the key. They were the ones who would have orchestrated Eleanor's institutionalization and Lily's adoption. We began to research my grandparents' lives in the early 1960s. We found old phone books, address directories, and property records. We discovered that my grandparents had moved houses around 1964, a year after Lily's birth and Eleanor's institutionalization, and that my mother, Margaret, had also moved shortly thereafter. It was possible the address change, coupled with a deliberate decision by my grandparents to keep the information from Margaret, prevented the letters from reaching her. However, the return to sender stamp on many of the letters suggested that the Postal Service attempted delivery to the old address. It was plausible that my grandparents intercepted the letters, or instructed the post office not to forward mail from Maplewood Sanatorium, fearing the truth would be revealed. Lily and I decided to search for any surviving relatives or acquaintances of my grandparents, anyone who might have been close to them in the early 1960s and might have known about Eleanor or Lily. This was a long shot, as most of that generation would be gone, or their memories faded. Through persistent research, we located an elderly, distant cousin on my mother's side, a woman named Martha Vance, who was in her late 80s and lived in a nearby town. Martha remembered Eleanor. Her memory was sharp, and she had a clearer picture of the family dynamics in the 1960s. When we spoke with Martha, she confirmed the painful truth. Eleanor, my mother's younger sister, had indeed become pregnant out of wedlock in 1962. My grandparents, consumed by the fear of social shame and scandal, had orchestrated a plan. Eleanor was sent to Maplewood Sanatorium, not solely for postpartum depression, but also as a means to hide her pregnancy and the subsequent birth of Lily. Lily was immediately given up for adoption, without Eleanor's full consent, while she was still fragile and institutionalized. Your grandmother, Martha recounted, her voice filled with sadness. She intercepted all the letters from Eleanor. She didn't want Margaret to know. She believed Margaret had her own life to build, and that this family shame would ruin it. She wanted to protect Margaret, and she wanted to keep the secret buried forever. My grandparents had indeed been the architects of this elaborate concealment, driven by fear and a misguided sense of protection. They had deliberately prevented Eleanor's letters from reaching my mother, ensuring the truth of Eleanor and Lily remained buried. This explained why my mother never knew. She was also a victim of her parents' desperate attempt to control the narrative, to protect her from a truth they deemed too shameful to bear. This brought a sense of sorrow for my mother, who had lived her life unaware of her sister's pain, of her own hidden niece. The weight of the secret, carried by my family for so long, was now being lifted, replaced by the profound hope of connection, of understanding, and of a family finally finding its way back to a form of wholeness, embracing its hidden branches and the lives that were shaped by secrets and difficult choices. Chapter 4.1 The Full Truth of the Secret, confirmed by Martha Vance, my elderly distant cousin, was heartbreaking and profound. Eleanor Vance, my mother's younger sister, my aunt, had become pregnant out of wedlock in 1962. My grandparents, driven by the fear of social shame and scandal in the conservative 1960s, had orchestrated a cruel plan. Eleanor was institutionalized at Maplewood Sanatorium, not solely for postpartum depression, but also to conceal her pregnancy and the subsequent birth of Lily in 1963. Lily, my cousin, was immediately given up for adoption without Eleanor's true consent, while she was still fragile and confined, and my grandmother had intercepted all of Eleanor's desperate letters to my mother, Margaret, believing she was protecting Margaret from the family shame and ensuring the secret remained buried. My mother, Margaret, the woman I knew, was also a victim of her parents' fear and deception. She had lived her entire life unaware of her sister's agony, unaware of her own hidden niece, Lily. The profound sorrow I felt for Eleanor, for her lost life and lost child, now extended to my mother, who had been unwittingly kept in the dark, denied the chance to know her sister and her niece. Lily and I, brought together by those undelivered letters, now understood the full extent of the secret that had shaped 3 generations of our family. The letters were no longer just a collection of faded papers. They were Eleanor's voice, a testament to her enduring love for Lily, her desperate pleas for connection, her cries for help, finally heard and understood after decades of silence. The discovery of the truth about Eleanor and Lily, and the understanding of my grandparents' motivations, brought a complex mix of emotions. There was anger at the injustice, at the choices made by my grandparents, driven by societal pressure. There was profound sadness for Eleanor's institutionalized life and Lily's lost connection to her biological mother. But there was also a sense of peace in finally knowing, in bringing the truth into the light, and in the profound connection Lily and I had found. Our focus now shifted to honoring Eleanor's memory and ensuring Lily fully understood her biological origins, her mother's fierce love for her, and the sacrifices made in the name of a hidden truth. We wanted to learn as much as we could about Eleanor's life before Maplewood, to paint a fuller picture of the young woman she was before tragedy struck. We looked for old photographs, school records, anything that could give us a glimpse into Eleanor's life. We found a few faded snapshots from my grandparents' old albums, pictures of a smiling young woman, vibrant and full of life. A striking resemblance to my mother. It was heartbreaking to see her, knowing the tragic fate that awaited her, knowing the life that was stolen from her. Lily, seeing photos of her biological mother for the first time, felt a profound connection. It was as if a missing piece of her own identity had fallen into place. She saw not just the victim of a societal injustice, but a beautiful, loving young woman who was her mother. A woman who had fought to remember her, to connect with her, even from behind sanatorium walls. We decided to visit Eleanor's grave. She was buried in a small, unmarked plot in the cemetery associated with the state mental hospital where she passed away. We brought flowers, spoke her name, and shared stories of her letters, of Lily's life, of the love that had finally found its way back to her. It was a solemn, yet deeply meaningful moment, a way of acknowledging her existence, her pain, and her enduring love, giving her the dignity and recognition she was denied in life. The act of laying flowers on her grave, of speaking her name aloud, felt like a silent promise to Eleanor that her story would no longer be buried, that Lily, her beloved daughter, was found and was thriving, and that the truth of her life and love would finally be known. The letters, kept hidden for so long, had not only connected Lily and me, but they had also given voice to Eleanor, allowing her story to be heard after decades of silence. They were a testament to the enduring power of a mother's love, a love that transcended time, institutionalization, and the deliberate efforts to bury its truth. The path to understanding, forgiveness, and connection was ongoing, but we faced it together. 2 cousins, bound by a shared history, brought together by a secret that had finally revealed itself after decades of waiting. Chapter 4.2, The Journey to Uncover the Full Truth of Eleanor's Life, Lily's Birth, and the secret concealment orchestrated by my grandparents was one of profound emotional intensity. Visiting Eleanor's unmarked grave, giving voice to her story after decades of silence, was a deeply moving experience for both Lily and me. The letters, Eleanor's poignant cries from Maplewood Sanatorium, were now not just historical documents, but living testaments to her fierce love for Lily, a love that had finally found its way home. Lily, after absorbing the full story of her biological mother, expressed a desire to understand more about her biological father. Eleanor's letters had never mentioned a father, likely a deliberate omission given the shame associated with an unmarried pregnancy. However, knowing the truth about her origins, Lily felt a profound need to know more about the man who was half of her genetic heritage. We decided to use Lily's DNA, already in the database from our initial search, to look for closer paternal matches. Often, adoption agencies, even in the past, collected some information about biological fathers, or perhaps there was a family secret on that side too. We looked at Lily's DNA matches, searching for any individuals who were close relatives on her paternal side. The DNA database quickly yielded a promising match, a predicted first cousin match on Lily's paternal side. The name was Daniel Thompson. The age of Daniel Thompson was listed as 65, consistent with being a first cousin to Lily, meaning his parents would be siblings of Lily's biological father. His location was in a different state, several hours away. This was a major breakthrough. If Daniel Thompson was Lily's first cousin, then his parents were siblings of Lily's biological father. This meant we could potentially identify Lily's biological father through Daniel Thompson's family tree. Lily reached out to Daniel Thompson through the DNA service. She introduced herself as a first cousin match, explaining that she was adopted and searching for information about her biological family. She was open about her journey to find her biological mother, Eleanor Vance, and the connection she had found with me. She mentioned the time period of 1962 to 1963 for her birth, as that would align with her conception. Daniel Thompson responded with surprising warmth and curiosity. He was aware of a family secret, a long-ago scandal involving his mother's younger brother, Charles Thompson. Charles had been a vibrant, somewhat rebellious young man in the early 1960s, known for his charm and his romantic entanglements. Daniel confirmed that Charles had an affair with a young woman in 1962, a woman who worked in a nearby town, but the relationship ended abruptly, and Charles never spoke of it again. The family always suspected there was more to the story, a child perhaps, but it was a topic that was fiercely avoided by his parents. Charles Thompson, Lily's biological father. Daniel shared old photographs of Charles, a handsome young man with a mischievous glint in his eyes. Lily saw a resemblance, a familiar curve of the jawline, a similar smile. Another piece of her identity, another part of her story was falling into place. Sadly, Charles Thompson had passed away in the late 1990s, unaware of the daughter he had fathered. But Daniel and his family were incredibly welcoming. They were curious about Lily, eager to connect with this newly discovered cousin, to welcome her into their family. They shared stories of Charles, of his life, his personality, helping Lily to form a picture of the father she never knew. The discovery of Lily's biological father's family, the Thompsons, added another layer of richness to our newly expanding family tree. Lily now had not only the story of her mother, Eleanor Vance, but also a connection to her paternal lineage, a family eager to embrace her. The letters from Eleanor, returned undelivered decades ago, had set in motion a chain of discoveries that revealed not just one, but two hidden branches of our family tree. The profound sorrow of Eleanor's lost life was tempered by the joy of Lily's newfound connections. The journey of understanding, forgiveness, and connection was ongoing. Lily and I continued to share stories, to process the immense emotional impact of these revelations. We discussed the societal pressures of the 1960s, the desperation of families to hide perceived shame, and the long-lasting consequences of those choices. There was no easy answer, no simple blame. It was a complex tapestry of human choices, fear, love, and the relentless march of time. The legacy of those undelivered letters was immense. They were not just pieces of paper. They were a lifeline across decades, a testament to a mother's enduring love, a key to unlocking buried truths, and a catalyst for a profound family reunion. My mother, Margaret, though unaware in life, had, in her passing, inadvertently brought the truth to light, allowing Eleanor's voice to be heard and Lily to find her place in the family she never knew existed. The quiet house, once filled with the echoes of a known past, was now vibrant with the unfolding story of a hidden history, a testament to the unexpected ways truth finds its way home.